The Late Show studio was already tense, before the cameras turned on. Not chaotic, not loud, just tense in the way that happens when everyone in the room knows something might go wrong, and no one's sure who will pull the trigger. Karoline Leavitt was scheduled to appear on the show to discuss her role as White House press secretary and the administration's communication strategy with young voters. It had been pitched as a discussion about reaching across generational divides, modernizing political communication, and the challenges of serving in high-pressure roles at a young age. But that was just the version the public saw. Behind the scenes, there were emails, conditions, and warnings. Karoline's team had been very specific about keeping the conversation focused on her professional experience in policy communication. The Late Show's producers had agreed, or at least they said they had. But just minutes before they walked onto the set, one of the producers whispered something to Stephen about really pressing her on the controversies and not letting her off easy, and Stephen's entire approach shifted. When Karoline finally stepped onto the stage, the applause was polite, but measured. The audience knew they were witnessing something unusual. The youngest White House press secretary in history, appearing on one of late-night television's most politically charged shows. Karoline wore a sharp burgundy blazer, her blonde hair perfectly styled, projecting confidence beyond her 27 years. She waved graciously, her smile professional but warm. Stephen started with his trademark sardonic grin. He said, Well, Karoline Leavitt is here, everyone. The youngest White House press secretary in history. Welcome to the show, Karoline. Or should I say, welcome to the lion's den. Karoline maintained her composure, smiling politely. She said, Thank you for having me, Stephen. Though I'd hardly call your show a lion's den, more like a comedy club with political opinions. The audience chuckled nervously. Stephen's eyebrows raised slightly. He continued, Fair enough. So tell me, what's it like being the face of an administration that, well, let's just say has made some interesting choices? Karoline's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She said, I think every administration makes choices that generate discussion. Stephen, my job is to communicate our policies clearly and answer questions from the press corps. Stephen leaned back in his chair, his expression skeptical. He said, Answer questions? From what I've seen, it's more like deflect questions, dodge questions, and occasionally insult the people asking questions. The temperature in the room began to shift. Karoline maintained her professional demeanor. She said, I believe in direct communication, Stephen. Sometimes that means challenging premises that I believe are inaccurate or unfair. For about 10 minutes, the conversation continued in this vein. Stephen making increasingly pointed jabs disguised as questions. Karoline responding with practiced, diplomatic language. The audience seemed to enjoy the sparring, but there was an underlying tension building. Then Stephen decided to escalate. He said, Karoline, you're 27 years old. When I was 27, I was trying to figure out how to do my own laundry. What makes you think you're qualified to speak for the entire federal government? Karoline's jaw tightened slightly. She said, Age doesn't disqualify someone from excellent. Stephen, I've worked in politics and communications for years. I've earned this position through hard work and results. Stephen's voice took on a mocking tone. He said, Hard work, results. Come on, Carol. When I make a mistake, it's front-page news. When you spread misinformation, disguised as comedy, it gets applause. The audience was riveted. Some looked uncomfortable with the direction this had taken. Stephen's famous quick wit seemed to abandon him. He said, Look, Karoline, you're taking this way too seriously. Too seriously. Karoline's voice rose. Stephen, you've spent the last 15 minutes attacking my qualifications, my integrity, and my appearance. And when I defend myself, I'm taking it too seriously. She stopped directly in front of his desk. This is exactly the problem with people like you. You dish it out, but you can't take it. You can mock, but you can't be mocked. You can attack, but when someone fights back, suddenly they're being too serious. The studio was electric. Karoline's passion was overwhelming, Stephen's prepared wit. She continued, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who'd had enough. You brought me here thinking you could embarrass me for your audience's entertainment. You thought you could make the young blonde press secretary look foolish and naive. Well, surprise, Stephen. I'm neither foolish nor naive. Stephen tried to interrupt. He said, That wasn't my intention. Yes, it was. Karoline's voice filled the studio. That's exactly your intention. That's your whole show. Bring on people you disagree with, and try to make them look stupid for laughs. She turned to address the audience directly. How many of you came here thinking you'd watch Stephen Colbert destroy the Trump press secretary? How many of you were hoping to see me humiliated on national television? Some audience members shifted uncomfortably. Others looked genuinely surprised by her directness. Karoline continued, Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not here to be your entertainment. I'm not here to be your punching bag. I'm here because I was told this would be a substantive discussion about political communication. She looked back at Stephen. Instead, I walked into an ambush designed to make me look incompetent and unprofessional. Well, you know what looks unprofessional, Stephen? Attacking a guest's qualifications based on their age and gender. Stephen's composure was cracking. He said, Karoline, you're completely mischaracterizing. Am I? Karoline laughed, but there was no humor in it. Then let me ask you something, Stephen. If I were a 27-year-old man in this position, would you have questioned my qualifications the same way? Would you have suggested I got the job because of how I look? The question hung in the air. Stephen had no good answer. Karoline nodded. I thought so. She gathered her purse from beside her chair. You know what, Stephen? I am done with this show. Not just tonight's show, this whole show. This whole format where political opponents are brought on to be ridiculed and humiliated for entertainment. As she prepared to leave, she delivered her most devastating observation. You think you're speaking truth to power, but you're just another entertainer making money off division and conflict. You think you're informing your audience, but you're just confirming their biases. She walked toward the exit with perfect posture. I came here to have a real conversation about real issues. Instead, I got treated like a prop in your political comedy show. Well, this prop is walking off stage. At the exit, she turned back one final time. To anyone watching who's tired of this kind of toxic political entertainment, you deserve better. You deserve real discussions about real issues, not comedy shows disguised as news programs. Her voice carried across the studio with absolute authority. And Steve, next time you want to attack someone's qualifications, maybe make sure you're qualified to do so. Because the last time I checked, being a late-night comedian doesn't make you an expert on government or journalism. The studio erupted as Karoline walked out with her head high, leaving Stephen sitting alone at his desk, visibly shaken. The audience didn't know how to react. Some applauded, others sat in stunned silence. Stephen tried to make a joke to recover, but it fell flat. Within minutes, the footage was everywhere. Social media exploded with reactions. Karoline was right, began trending alongside Colbert got schooled. From her hotel room, Karoline posted, went on late-night TV expecting a discussion. Got an ambush instead. Young women in politics deserve better than being treated as entertainment for hostile audiences. The response was massive and divided. Conservative voices praised her for standing up to biased media. Liberal voices criticized her for not being able to handle tough questions. But something significant had been exposed. The way late-night comedy shows had become vehicles for political attack disguised as entertainment. Fellow young women in politics rallied behind Karoline. Several shared their own experiences of being belittled on comedy shows. The incident sparked broader conversations about ageism, sexism, and the ethics of political entertainment. At a political conference the following week, Karoline was asked about the walk-off. She said, I don't regret defending myself. Young people in politics, especially young women, face enough challenges without being mocked for entertainment. Sometimes you have to draw a line. The revolution wasn't just in a press secretary walking off a comedy show. It was in exposing how political entertainment works, how it disguises attack as humor, how it treats real people as props, how it profits from division while claiming to serve democracy. Karoline Leavitt didn't just shut down Stephen Colbert that night. She shut down the idea that political figures should accept humiliation as the price of media access. She proved that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is refuse to be unprofessionally treated. And she showed that age and gender don't disqualify someone from demanding respect, even from comedians. Especially from comedians who've forgotten the difference between humor and hostility. Because that night, Karoline Leavitt reminded everyone that being young doesn't mean being weak. Being blonde doesn't mean being dumb. And being in politics doesn't mean being anyone's punching bag. Not even for laughs.